26th of August, 1346. King Edward III is leading an army of English, Welsh, Breton, Flemish and German mercenaries. We are in northern France, near Crécy.
La bataille de Crécy, 1346-1347. Cette grande bataille marqua le début de la guerre des Cent Ans et le retour d'une technique traditionnelle d'archerie. Il est très difficile de donner un état précis des forces en présence. L'armée française, beaucoup plus nombreuse, était formée, était organisée sur 3 lignes. Au devant, on a les arbalétaires génois, ainsi que des lignes de chevaliers. Le reste est composé de troupes à pied.
Hello noble ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking. As I said in a dedicated video of the Battle of Agincourt, that battle is considered to be the battle which exemplifies the concept of longbow versus plate armor or plate armored knights and the sort of victory of longbow. And I have said why in that video I don't agree with such statements. But the Battle of Crécy instead is often considered to be the battle where the longbow defeated the crossbow. So what's my take on that? Well, you see, rarely in warfare the victory of one faction over the other is a sign or evidence of the superiority of one form of equipment to the other. There are a lot of different factors which need to be taken into consideration. We have to take into consideration the terrain, the tactics, who the commanders were, what orders were given, what level of training the soldiers had, how many war veterans are there, and for how many people is this the first battle, how is the morale, how is the weather, are they all well fed, how much did they have to march before facing their opponents? Have they rested? You see, a battle is a three-dimensional crystal, a diamond that you cannot behold from one perspective only. But for sake of knowledge, let's compare the advantages and disadvantages of the longbow over the crossbow, and you will see that many will be different to what you had thought. You see, many people think that, well, the longbow would have the advantage of reach as the crossbow would have less range, but the crossbow has got more power, or penetrative power, or kinetic energy. Well, you see, I don't think that this makes much sense. Well, first of all, because when we look at medieval iconography, we very rarely see archers shoot, longbow archers, actually shoot this way, if not in the case of actual sieges, where they have to shoot towards the towers, for example, or the walls of the castle they are attacking. When you see actual drawings or representations of battle, you see archers, longbowmen, shooting this way, so in front of them at point blank. Now, the reason for that is quite obvious in my opinion. Even if the longbow could reach a longer distance, you can't consider the arrows to be effective against particularly armored opponents at the very maximum range possible. So the range of efficacy of such arrows as far as penetration is concerned would still be rather short. So yes, theoretically you could hit a target at a longer distance with a longbow, but the question is, in battle, would you want to? So I don't think that the actual effective range of both the longbow and the crossbow would be that significantly different. It would be slightly different, but not that significantly different if we take into consideration the idea of actually wounding your opponent with your arrows. Also, the idea of crossbows being significantly more powerful than longbows. Well, you see, there are different opinions on this one, but my opinion is, as far as I could see, as far as draw weight is concerned, the longbow was indeed a war bow, and it was built for power, built for penetration, not for distance. So the draw weight the longbow has and the way you have to operate it, actually drawing all the way back, it was created not just for distance, like we often say, even in games, for example, but it's actually for power. It was a weapon built for power, and the draw weight that certain longbows, like the Merry Rose bow, can reach is actually very close to that of that period's crossbows. So no, I don't think that there is much difference in the actual power generated by a longbow, a warbow, and a medieval crossbow. So what are the actual differences? Well, first of all is the amount of arrows you can shoot at your enemy. It is faster to reload a longbow than a crossbow. They have made tests. Normally I don't even consider these tests. I haven't really seen tests properly made. As far as I know, there is a difference. So crossbows are slower when you have to reload them. That is an advantage for the longbow. But a disadvantage for the longbow over the crossbow is the fact that you need a lot more training to operate a longbow than you do to operate a crossbow. What that means is that longbowmen would be more expensive as far as their daily pay is concerned if compared to crossbowmen. Longbowmen were not cheap. They were definitely cheaper than knights, but they weren't cheap. We are around, I think, 6 pence per day for a longbowman, which, considering the numbers they had, was quite a lot of money. The French army arrived at Crécy ridgeline at around midday on the 26th of August. King Philip was advised to encamp and meet the enemy on the following day, but the senior nobles opposed this idea, and the attack was launched on the same day. You see, this was a big mistake. So this is the first thing we need to take into consideration when examining the English victory here. Not the weapons they're using, not the equipment they're carrying, but this choice. So the French army had marched for many hours. They were tired, but they still launched the attack. The English, on the other side, they were well fed because they had plundered the countryside around. They had slept all night because they took their positions the night before, so they were well rested, and they had time to prepare. Prepare for what? Well, of course, prepare for the French cavalry. They knew the French knights were coming, so they started digging. They dug holes, pits, trenches. They positioned themselves on top of uphill slopes. They did everything they could to maim the French cavalry charge. The English army was organized in 3 lines. In the rear, you had spearmen, in the center you had men at arms, and in the front you had longbowmen, archers. They were also arrayed in jagged line. English men at arms were ordered to fight on foot. As far as the French army was concerned, we have a vanguard of Genoese crossbowmen, mercenary crossbowmen. Then you have 3 divisions. The second line was commanded or led by Charles II, and there were mounted knights and infantrymen, and the rest of the army was in other 2 divisions, and King Philip was commanding the rear.
Messere, ascoltate. Di noi fu detto che indomito non fu il nostro cuore durante suddetta battaglia, ma io vi dico, prima che voi vogliate giudicare, prestate orecchio. Sappiate che dopo giorni di dura marcia neppure un giaciglio ci fu offerto. Nondimeno affrontammo il nemico senza difesa alcuna. E gli archi degli inglesi gridarono, senza darci requiem. Ma non fu la lor gelida mano ad esser senza pietate, ma l'algido sguardo della francese nobiltà dall'alto dei lor destrieri.
In the next part I would like to talk about the Genoese crossbowmen, because here is another big problem. what you have to understand is when people say, you see, the longbow beat the crossbow. But hold on a second. Genoese crossbowmen, it had rained. Now, when it rains, ranged weapon units have a huge problem because their weapon can receive damage. Now, the English, when they saw the rain, they removed the strings from their bows. So the bows had no problems. But you can't do that with crossbows. The crossbows got wet, so they weren't functional, or at least they weren't 100% functional. Secondly, the Genoese crossbowmen had to leave their pavis shields, or scudi pavesi, on the wagons where they were carrying them, and they were ordered to march. So we have the Genoese crossbowmen marching without their shields and with almost unserviceable crossbows towards the enemy line in the vanguard. They don't have the pavis, and please keep this in mind, because the pavis were used by Genoese crossbowmen to defend them while reloading, because of the fact that crossbows are slower at reloading than longbows, as we said. So the battle begins with the first volley shot by the Genoese crossbowmen, which doesn't do much damage at all to the English lines because of the fact that the crossbows were basically almost unserviceable. So the English then respond, so they retaliate with the longbows, and this time they do a lot of damage. They kill the crossbowmen, because they couldn't protect themselves because they didn't have the pavis shields. And we do know that in this battle the English actually used some forms of rudimentary cannons, which aren't reported to have done a lot of damage in terms of casualty, but they were terribly loud, and they definitely must have completely destroyed the already broken morale of these men. What happened after this is that the crossbowmen clearly retreat. Their weapons are unserviceable, they're not dealing enough damage, they are receiving casualties, the English are shooting volleys one after another, keeping shooting on them, they go back. So what do the French do? Well, the second line were mounted knights, so the nobles see the mercenaries basically retreat, they think that they are running away, and they charge into them. So we have the French cavalry hacking down their own allies. Imagine what the English must have thought seeing that situation. And of course then the cavalry proceeds to attack the longbowmen, but they can't. The charge is again completely nullified because of all the trenches that were built, and they even tried to go around them, to outflank them, but the English had organized themselves. They were on top of uphill slopes, and the cavalry actually tried a few times to climb these slopes, but they failed, also because they continued receiving arrows. So men after men and knights after knights kept dying, their horses died, so they had to retreat. The battle will finish when the king himself, Philip, will run away. It was indeed a decisive victory for the English. Alright, noble ones, thank you very much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Just wanted to let you know and remind you that this week there will be other battle videos. So if you like this sort of content, please stay tuned. And remember, the Metatron has spread his wings. Goodbye.